telling you that we're live?
Oh, yes, there is. There's an on air, yeah.
On air.
It's like a studio audience.
There you go. Well, good morning, everyone. We've got on a little bit early, so I could introduce Steve to you. We're just chit-chatting about anything. We're talking about everything, actually. What do you have planned for today, Steve? What are you working on?
Wow, that's an interesting question. I usually start every day drawing a little bit. I have a cartoon that I draw, so I'll work on that. I'm actually drawing backgrounds for an app, but it's a personal project, so I always try to start every day with that.
Huh.
I've got a lookbook for a shoe company I'm working on, so I'm compiling all the images and making them sing and dance, and it's probably going to be about a 16 to 20 page book. It's a fashion thing. And I'm doing a cover for it's a kind of a medical journal, I'd say.
Okay. Wow.
It varies tremendously. So it's this issue is about pregnancy and lactation.
That is interesting. Wow, you got a vast clientele.
Yeah, I like that. I don't work for a company.
Mm-hmm.
See, I always avoided working for a company because I knew I'd get kind of pigeonholed into well, you're good at this. And I've actually had art directors tell me, we don't know how to hire you because we don't know what to expect.
Right.
And, that's kind of business 101 is specialize. But it wasn't interesting to me.
I don't think designers.
So I've always,
I don't think designers worked that way before. I don't think anyone was vertical per se. They just did design. I mean, I think there was an annual report industry. There were certain smaller industries, but for the most part, everyone took on whatever, because if you understand the principles of design, they sort of apply across the board.
I totally agree. I remember a few years ago, a supplement company approached me and were interviewing me and somebody else to do some label design. And they asked me how much label design and how much in the supplement industry. And I said, really not that much, but I'll tell you, any designer worth their weight, they can design anything. I mean, that's, to me, that's the interesting thing about design is I get to learn about my clients. And it's kind of like, reading. You read about different subjects. Well, you learn intimately if you work closely with a client about their industry. And I find that fascinating.
Right.
That to me is... So I hate to be this specialist.
That's
but
good.
That's what everybody's always looking for. That.
But we're going to talk about special things today, like that. Specialized things. So hi everyone. I see Alyssa is on, and of course Julie, and Bradley, and then Karen. Hi guys. So as we're just getting ready, I was just wondering what everyone's working on today. Steve's working on a medical issue cover and a shoe look, right? Yeah. Hi, Karina.
Very.
So what are you working on? That would be great to know as we're just waiting for people to file in the room here.
Oh, we're still ahead of schedule, so yeah.
We're still ahead of schedule. So can everyone...
Yeah, it looks... Oh, go on.
Can everyone hear us okay and see us okay? I just want to make sure because sometimes I'm making the assumptions. Oh, good.
Looks like it, yeah.
Yeah. So see, Karina is...
Wait, here's one.
You're designing
online dining guide.
Wow. Excellent. Very cool.
It's good everybody's creative. Yay for creative
in
folks.
Some way or another, right? We all are. Oh, Briar, thanks for getting out of a faculty meeting for this. I was just wondering, before we start, if there is a way that we could invite you to screen a little bit later, just let me know if you would be open to that, because we'd love to ask you a couple questions as well. Thank you. So Alyssa is doing some social media posts for Scrubs brand, like scrubs, like clothing scrubs, Alyssa?
Like medical scrubs?
Oh, nice. Yeah, medical scrubs. Very cool.
We might have the same kind of work today.
There you go.
With my pregnancy and lactation cover.
That's great. Okay, everyone. So thank you again for joining us today in the Typography Dojo. This is where we come together to explore the techniques and practice of type and typography. Today, I have with me Steve Rachwal. I am Rachel Elnar. I'm the co-founder of TypeEd. And Steve, can you introduce yourself? Yeah.
Yeah. I'm Steve Rachwal. I've been a designer for too long, over 25 years, and I started out as a typesetter.
Right.
And that's how I'm a designer and illustrator and photographer and a jack of all trades. But I did really started with typography. I was in art school and I studied type, and then I got a job as a typesetter when it existed.
Can you tell me a little bit? I mean, you started in Otis, so can you tell us a little bit about that, how that started out?
Well, I actually had a degree from the University of Michigan in psychology.
Oh, wow.
And then I said, hey, I'm an artist. I'm a designer. I thought, wow, designing posters or logos was great. I had no idea what typography even was. I didn't even know what the word was. I mean, it's funny, when I went to art school, we had to learn what a font was. It wasn't an everyday word. Nobody knew, not everybody knew what it was. Now everybody, a font this and a font that. But then we studied it. Mm-hmm. It's really a typeface, but that's all right.
It's really right.
And then I got a job as a typesetter. I had to drop out of art school, and a teacher of mine said, and she didn't even know the guy. She said it was at a type house. She said, he's looking for somebody to work. You might want to apply there. And so I called him up and I went over there and he gave me a test. And it was like almost like an English test. And I answered it and he said, okay, thank you. And I didn't hear from him he said at the end of the interview, he said, maybe I'll hire you as a proofreader. And I really didn't even understand the business, what I was even interviewing for. I wanted to be a designer. And about a month later, he called me and said, hey, I want to see if you want to be trained as a typesetter. I said, sure. And it was actually the best job in the business was to be a typesetter. You got paid the most money. Mm-hmm. And he said, you'll learn, it'll take 3 months to just even be worthwhile, have any value for me. It will take 3 months of training just for you to have value. And he trained me and it was at the beginning, it was hard because this was before the Macs. And it was about the same time, but nobody was really using a Mac, certainly not to design, in 84. And I started typesetting in 85. So right at sort of the tail end of phototypesetting. And I happened to be at a place that, Berthold type was known as the best type in the world.
Right.
It was, it was well designed. It was, the kerning was good. It was beautifully cut. It wasn't really cut, but it was, that was the old term for the metal type.
We still use that today.
Yeah. Right. Well, Bertholds are still great fonts. I have the whole library. They're great typefaces.
So can you?
And he taught me how to typeset. Yeah.
Can you walk us through, like, when I first started talking to you, I didn't understand what typesetting was exactly. I know what I do, but can you walk me through a typical day of you at Berthold, at EllaType, actually?
Yeah, EllaType was the name of the company, but we used a Berthold system, which was a German system. It was a huge computer. So it wasn't a glorious job. It was pretty mundane. I sat at a typewriter basically with a monitor that wasn't WYSIWYG. That's the term. What you see is what you get. Mm-hmm. That was kind of in the 80s was a big term because it wasn't WYSIWYG. We saw the code, but we didn't see what the result would be until we printed it out. But as you got good at typesetting, you kind of figured out, you kind of could see it in your head what it would look like. So I would get, the proofreader would go over, get a new job in and review it and write any notes and give it to the typesetter. And I would get this handwritten sheet. Sometimes it was typed by a typewriter, but it certainly there was not a disk involved. No client had a disk to give us. We retyped everything, even if it had been typed already. So we would sit and type. We would have to, we had to, for every size and every font and every that pretty much the size and the font had to be a different type number. So if we had to set the first line of text in 10-point Bodoni bold, that was one type number. And then if one word in that line was Bodoni bold italic at 10-point, we had to give it a different type number. So when we typed, this is Bodoni bold, before we did that, we'd say type number 1, and then we'd type this is Bodoni bold, and then we'd say type number 2, we'd have to put in and say Bodoni bold italic. And then we go back to type number 1. So we and every job could only have 20 type numbers. They were called TN1, TN2. And that was sort of on a different monitor, not a different monitor, but a different screen. And then we'd go back to the screen and type. And so if you wanted to do, like one of the jobs we did in the 80s, this company that I worked for, we converted nearly the entire Motown music library when they were converting it from LPs to CDs. Mm-hmm. So there were a lot of CDs, that were round, and some of the designs, we would have to rag the type around the curve. Now today, you just draw a curve and you fit your type in, but we weren't able to do that, and we couldn't see it. We had to tell the computer indent 16 millimeters and then type our business, and then indent 12 millimeters, and that would change depending on the leading, because if it was open leading, then you wouldn't indent it. So there was not a protocol. You had to make it up each time, and you had to sort of figure it out. And so we had calculators, 25.4 millimeters in an inch. I still know that today because it was every day. It was kind of math and computers, not really design. It was, and then we would type all this information in, and we would fill a sheet, a piece of paper. I don't know, it was probably 8 by 10 or 10 by 12. I don't remember. And when we filled up our page, and we can kind of get a feeling for where things were on a page, we would then print the job. And there was a whole machine. And you, Rachel, you have those pictures. Yeah. You might want to
sure, I can
show the Berthold system. Right, there was.
Let me see
that computer, that garish.
Is that one or no? The
computer. No, that one. That was a precursor to the one I used. That one, that garish greenish yellow. That was the actual computer I worked on. That keyboard was nifty though.
This is the actual one.
The orange, and it was pretty similar to that. Yeah, and that image on the right. So the computer, you can see the desk where the chair would fit under, mm-hmm. and on the right, there's a green button. That's obviously the on button, and big. I think they were 5 1/4 inch floppy disks.
Oh my gosh!
Fit on, that's what that black panel is there.
Right.
And you'd use these big floppy disks, and then that machine on the right is the printer. That was a printer. So we would, when we were getting ready to print, we could only use 5. And see, so I'm kind of jumping around a little bit. Okay. But because we use the glass fonts, right? So each font was on each font had its own. It was almost the size of a cell phone.
Let me see
right?
if I can find that. Is that one?
Yeah, that one. Right. It was about the size of a cell phone. It was glass, and they were worth about $200-300 each, even in the 80s. And they had every character in the font, but all the same size. And that would go into the printer, and we could only use. So that's Futura Fett, which in German Fett is bold. So that's Futura bold, and then if Futura bold italic was on another disk, and Futura regular was on. So we could only load 5 of those into a job at a time.
Oh.
So we would load the disks into the printer. We'd open it up and load the disks in, and then we would take it. You also have a picture of a tray.
Let's see here.
It was part of the manual, I think.
Part of the manual. Okay, so I'm just scrolling back.
There it is. The bottom one. The next one.
Okay.
Next one. Yeah, so that is the paper would fit into a disc like that. So we'd have to go into the dark room because we were doing this on photo paper. What do you call that paper? So we'd photosensitive paper. So we'd go into the dark room and load the disk in the dark. Wait, I'm just noticing all these comments. So I'll ignore those for now. So we'd go into the dark room and we'd load the paper in, and then we'd come in and load it into the printer. So that container was sealed from light.
Oh, got it.
Because it was light sensitive paper. So then we'd put that into the printer and we'd have our fonts into the printer, our 5 discs, and we would tell the computer to print the job. And that was an incredible thing. You couldn't see it operating, but what basically happened is, because you had that one disc with everything one size, that there was a camera lens in the printer, and it was on a conveyor belt. So if you had big type, you could hear the conveyor belt kind of move. It would move closer to the disc, and it would start taking pictures of each character as it needed. So if you were typing the word P, it would, perfect, it would type a P, and let's say the first letter is a capital, it'd find a capital P, and then it would find the E and the R. So
you're saying that it would move this disc around,
that disc was stationary.
Oh, I see.
But the lens would adjust for the character. And with big type, with 36 point or 48 point type, it was fairly slow. But when you got to be small type, that thing would almost sound like a machine gun. You could hear it just go click, 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 click. It was like a rat-a-tat-tat. Right. It was loud. And it would just take pictures of every character. So, it was 36 point, it was close up, and then the lens would move back to shoot 10 point, and then it would change discs when it got to the bold italic. It had to, it would have to put it into place, and all this you could hear it, and the printer broke down all the time. But my boss, actually, the guy that started the company, he actually started working for Berthold as a repairman, so he knew how to repair the machines. Other companies had to wait days for a repair guy to come out and fix it.
You're lucky.
So they would he was lucky. Yeah. He made more money.
Yeah. So I found this image. Is this how it worked? Basically, there was a light source inside?
I think that is an image of a typesetter.
Okay, so not quite.
But it's the same sort of way of doing it.
Okay.
But it's the same. And the typesetter, and I know you have a picture of one. Right. They had one in the dark room, and those were for headline fonts.
Okay.
So because to buy a typeface for on the glass discs was hundreds of dollars a disc, but you could buy. They had them on these I think they were on film positive rolls. They were almost like a toilet paper roll, but smaller. And it was film positive, and it had all the characters on the roll, and it would fit into one side. It was on like a round. I don't even know how to explain it, but you could roll your letters along and change them. So you'd have A, and you'd roll over to C, and you'd roll over to W, and you'd roll back and forth, and you'd take pictures of each character. So it was very similar to the Berthold technology, but it wasn't automatic. It was done by a person in a dark room. This one looks like it wasn't even done in a dark room. So the guy that operated the typesetter, he was in the dark room all day long. Mm.
So the typesetter was really for typefaces that you didn't have in those books.
Yeah, headline fonts, because it didn't pay to buy all the typeface. It was too expensive. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you had the whole, if you had the whole library, let's say you had all the typefaces, the whole family of Futura, mm-hmm. You might have 12 fonts. Right. I mean, that's expensive. That's thousands of dollars.
Right.
And we probably had about 500 fonts,
which is a lot.
So,
yeah.
So then let me finish the whole process. So you got that down. So then it would print out, and then after it was done, we would take the canister with the light sensitive paper, and we'd bring it into the dark room, and then we would open it up and put it into an automatic processor that would it was a developer, and I had a fixer. So it was like the old darkroom technology, right? But we had a machine that did that, which always broke down. And then it would come out the other side. There was a dryer attached to it. It would come out the other side. We'd pick it up and have our sheet, and we'd look at it, and we'd give it to the proofreader, who would find problems and give it back to us, and then we could save the file, and we'd make changes to the file, and then they would deliver it to the client. We had a delivery guy that would deliver to the client.
So these were galleys that you were sending out, correct?
Yeah, they were galleys.
Right.
Sometimes they had a bunch of different things, and then on one page, and then they would cut them up and paste them up. The old paste,
Right.
That's where cut and paste comes from.
Right. So my partner Michael used to work in the photo typesetting area from the designer side, who would actually order the type. So how was that done?
Sure.
How was that done?
Well, I did that too.
Okay.
After I was typesetting, I became a designer. I remember LA County Museum of Art hired me to design a book, and it was weird because all of a sudden I was ordering type, and I never ordered type. In fact, when I was in art school, I used to set my own type. It was a luxury because I didn't have to pay. It was expensive.
Right.
It was a lot of money to buy type. We take it for granted now because we just do it.
Yes. Of course.
But it was expensive. So you'd get these galleys, and I did a 450-page book for LACMA, and it was all done on art boards with my Mayline, and you just get pages of text. It was luckily for a book, it was all the same size.
Yes.
But if there's a typo, you had to. So you'd have it. You might have a quarter of a page of type, and then you'd have to take the next galley and measure. Let's say it's 15-point leading. You'd have to measure 15 points and get it straight and paste it. Put hot wax on the back and paste it on the board, and make sure that you got from one line to the next, because it could be in the middle of a paragraph, was exactly 15 points or pretty damn close.
Yeah.
And then you just keep going the next board, and you type them up, and then the editor would say, oh, well, that word's wrong, and you'd have to type that little word. You'd have to cut out a word and paste it in position, or maybe it was a letter, or the type was bad, and you had to have the typesetter reset it because something was funky about the board, or maybe you scratched your X-Acto knife over it. Or
so from a designer point of view,
your dog ate it.
So you're saying that you did a 450-page book, and it was typeset. So someone had to type in all that text.
Yeah.
How did you deliver that content to the typesetter?
Well, it was all delivery.
Okay.
So we had drivers. People had drivers.
No, I meant
the company, the types houses.
Like how? I mean, you didn't send over.
I think the editor. I didn't type it.
Okay.
The editor at LACMA typed it, probably on a typewriter.
And then the typesetter would have to retype it in.
So the editor would give it. The editor gave it to me.
Okay.
And I would mark it up. I'd say I want this to be. I'd circle a paragraph and say I want this to be 14-point Garamond on 18-point leading, let's say. And the column width has to be 30 millimeters or 30 or 20 picas. I think we probably did it in picas. Mm-hmm. But in the Berthold machine, we didn't have picas. We used millimeters. So we had to convert the picas to millimeters. Oh, my gosh. So we knew that 12 points in a pica and,
right,
et cetera. And so I would you'd have to mark that up. And as a typesetter, that's what I saw, too, is what the designer marked up. Maybe it was from their client. Sometimes it was just chicken scratched out. And, I mean, the funny story is when I first was learning to typeset, they gave me, it might have been my very first job. They gave me an address line for stationery, I think it was. And the designer, and I remember the top of the page, it said, 123 Main Street. And then it had this symbol, and they put an arrow and they wrote Dingbat. And then they wrote Los Angeles, California. And they wrote the dot, and they put Dingbat. And I didn't know what a dingbat was. So I typed out the word dingbat. I didn't know. I learned what a dingbat was. It was me. And the proof, they had a great laugh over that one. I'll tell you.
That's great. Hey guys, I just wanted to ask you if you have any questions for Steve. We'll be answering questions at the end. So underneath the questions and topics tab, right underneath, go ahead and put in your questions, and then this way it can be recorded for everyone who watches it afterwards. So it'd be very appreciated.
Here, let me comment.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I want to comment on Karina says limited number of fonts, one way to set design constraints. Actually, you could have 30 fonts if you wanted. We just had to change, and some jobs were complicated, and we just had to change. So we would fit the first 5 fonts on one page, and we'd have to sort of track that out. We'd put 5 fonts on one page, and then we'd put 5 other fonts on another page. Mm-hmm. I mean, some jobs, it was always a pain, but some jobs had 7, 8 different fonts.
Oh my gosh, wow.
I mean, that's not hard to do when you have italics and bold and regular all being different fonts. I mean, that can happen pretty quickly.
Right. So,
and it was a pain. Yeah.
I know. Can you give me an idea of cost? Like if I was going to order one sheet or one galley, how much would that be?
Oh, boy. I didn't do costing. I saw costing. I think our minimum was $30
per page.
So even if you had to change that, so $30 minimum.
Okay.
You could have one line of type and it was $30.
Okay. So
now I think they negotiated with him. I mean, and Berthold was expensive. Mm. It was more expensive than Mergenthaler or some of the other companies because it was the best type. And, highbrow designers wanted the best type.
Of course.
And so we had all the best designers in LA. I mean, there were only 3 Berthold shops in LA. Us, Andreessen, which was a monster company.
They're big.
They had many more than Berthold. They had a Berthold division, but they did a lot of different things. They were the biggest company. And then a guy named Joe Malloy, who had one machine and one typesetter, and basically it was mainly personal and a little bit of work here and there. Mm-hmm. Sometimes Joe Malloy's machine would break down, or even Andreessen. We would set type for both of those companies when their machines broke down. Oh my gosh,
that was lucky for you.
Yeah. Well, okay.
So Briar is.
Do I remember? We did set stuff for Briar. Yeah, we did set stuff for Sussman. We did a lot of Sussman Prezja.
Yeah.
I don't remember anything specific. It was. They did a lot of the Olympic stuff, most of it, and I worked there after the Olympics, so I didn't work on. But I was at Otis right during that time, and a lot of my teachers were actually from Sussman Prezja. I mean, most of them. I learned most of my stuff from people that worked at Sussman Prezja. And so they worked on a lot of that stuff. The 84 Olympics, yeah.
Very cool. Briar, can I invite you on screen? Let me see if I can do that. If you have video. Okay, great. Excellent. So I'm going to bring on Briar. She is, now I'm not totally clear, but the director of graphic means, is that correct? Let me know when she gets on. I hope it's working. Oh, she disappeared. Let's try this again. Okay, while we're waiting for her to hopefully jump on. So you're talking about Sussman Prezja, and then what other clients were you working with?
Well, we did Motown. I don't remember. Honestly, we did every hotshot designer in town we did work for, but I just don't remember them all. I remember Burson-Marsteller, but I don't remember anything specific. And I don't think I ever saw the final results. She's still struggling.
Yeah, I know. I see that. Yeah. She keeps jumping on and off, so we'll try again here. There she is. Hey, Briar.
Hi.
Hi.
I have 2 screens, so I don't know where I'm looking.
You're looking right at us right now, so that's great.
Okay.
We see you.
It's nice to meet you. Thanks for coming on screen with us. Whoops. Oh, we lost her. Maybe we'll try one more time. Okay, we'll see if it works.
Okay.
Yay. Thanks for joining us.
Don't touch anything.
Okay, so can I ask you to introduce yourself to everyone who's here?
Yeah, so I'm directing and producing a film about graphic production methods before the desktop computer and then the transition to. And we're in post-production right now, and I've gotten to interview a lot of folks. And I haven't spoken to anyone that worked on the Berthold machine, which I've always admired that photo that I've seen online. So it's cool to hear about.
Wait, which photo?
That one of the sort of chartreuse machine.
The machine, yeah. With garish, that was the new and best, brightest.
I like it. It's a cheerful color.
What's
it's a
that?
cheerful color.
I don't know if you did it every day on that color.
So, Briar, why did you decide to start this movie or this documentary?
I had just started collecting tons of type and design manuals, production manuals from all my Goodwill trips, and I knew some of the stuff. So I started school in I started learning design in '96. So we had basically already converted to digital, but there were just little hints of it around in our school. So yeah, it's always been this slight mystery to me, and I became more and more fascinated, and I just eventually realized I wanted to share it first with my students, and then I thought, well, why not share it with others? Other designers must be curious about this too.
Right. I mean, we are. I don't know how many others are. Us three are.
When Rachel approached me about this, I didn't think anybody cared. Nobody cared for 30 years. It's kind of funny to me.
I mean, I think there's just not a lot of young designers don't even know. I mean, they understand typeset, or they understand letterpress because that has had a resurgence, and it's fairly easy to understand. It's a mechanical process. It's a fairly simple process, but the photo setting is really harder to wrap your head around. It's really complex.
It is very complex.
Yeah.
But what we teach at Type Ed is basically you need to know your numbers. You need to know the typefaces before you actually start, scrolling down that list and looking at. You can't just look at everything. You need to know it before you typeset it, and to talk to them about the photo typesetting era and that process of actually using your hands to do layout makes you understand what you're doing more so than just playing around with software. And so that's why I love that you decide to bring the subject into view with the Graphic Means project and the movie. So we're super excited that you're doing this.
Yeah, I mean, when you were designing stuff, Steve, I imagine the process of getting to the point where you actually got your type was quite a long time. So everything was maybe a lot more deliberate than what we do now.
You had to think about it, and you did a lot of sketches. And I remember when I started on the computer, it was right around the time I was typesetting. My first computer was a Mac SE, which was the second model of Mac I got in '86. And I remember I was designing on it, and other designers would say, oh, "You're designing on it? You can't do that." I mean, it was like sacrilegious to do that. I kind of had to, but I love the process of being able to push and pull. Oh, you just got to use it as a tool. It can't be. But now it's become, that's what it is. And it's a great asset. You can explore so much more now.
Do you know
you had to sort of think it up.
Make it past that transition?
Excuse me?
Do you know anyone who didn't make it past that transition?
Well, I'm not going to name names. But I do, yes. He's still working. I think he's still working, and he's actually he's a fairly well-known designer. But I think I don't know if he really ever got into the computer so much. At one time I begged him for a job. I wanted to work for him so bad. He hired me to do a book with him, and I did it on the Mac.
And Steve, you won't tell us who you're talking about? Okay.
I can't.
All right.
But I don't know. I really admired him. He was a mentor of mine. But he never really got the computer.
Well, I've definitely had art directors that learned just enough to get by, and then
it was a whole different way of doing things. Yeah, right. Yeah, but now it's the other way where you have clients that think they know because they know how to use the program, right, but they have no desire. I had a guy tell me, "Oh, anybody can pick a font."
Love that.
I've named his name, but nobody knows who he is.
Do you remember
Well, you were a typesetter, so you didn't have to learn how to typeset. But I always think about designers all of a sudden having to typeset. And did you look down on their skills at first?
Well, at first. I don't. I don't want to sound pompous, but I don't think most people know the skills. I think some people do. I think there's some good typography out there, but I mean, all the little secrets, I don't think most people know those skills, like how to rag a line and get it to work well. The little tricks. I don't know. Maybe they're teaching that in art school, but I see a lot of bad type out there.
Yeah. Oh yeah, lots.
I was thinking about right around the time that people were getting their hands on the Mac, and they had never set their own type before, and so
no, they were at a big disadvantage. I don't think they knew
that type at that time specifically.
Oh yeah. I didn't save any of it, but yeah. But there's many talented people, and there's some great stuff. You know, we didn't learn anything about setting type in art school, right? Yeah, they probably didn't.
You got to be in both worlds of the typesetter and the designer, and I think like young designers don't really understand that there was maybe some headbutting or just like tension between those.
Well, you know, a typesetter was. I don't know. I'm trying to think of a job that would be similar to it. I mean, we didn't have any creative say. You know, we were told what to do. Now, we had expertise in terms of kerning and spacing but you know, and how a rag works, you know, and when it's justified, how to make it look good justified. That I don't think a lot of people know to this day how to do those little tricks to make that work. And that's kind of thing that could definitely be taught in art schools, some good type skills, good typesetting skills. It's kind of a combination. I don't think it would be a whole course, but maybe a workshop or a one day of the semester where you learn these things can make much better type. I mean, that's how I got into book design, because I knew type.
Right.
Now I don't do as much book design. It's a sweatshop job.
Yeah, publishing is not where the money is.
Well, it's also hard work. You know, it's a lot of nuances. You know, I love it. I've designed probably 50 books. I love it, but it's a grueling process, like typesetting. It's not a sexy show how wonderful, you know, my design is, unless you're a designer and understand the quality of typesetting.
It can be kind of zen when you're in a typesetting, you know, when you have a day of just typesetting and no design, and I like.
You can just focus on that one task.
Yeah,
it's nice.
Yeah, it's you know, I guess the love of the detail.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Where are you calling in?
Which you have to have. I mean,
where are you calling in from? Where are you?
I'm in my school office.
Where's that?
Oh, sorry, Portland State University.
Okay, great.
Looks like a sunny. You got a window, and it looks like a sunny day there.
We just started getting warm weather. It's really nice.
I know, and here in Los Angeles, it's so dark and cloudy and rainy. I need to just open my window here.
I heard this too.
There you go.
It's funny when that happens.
But we're sitting in front of a computer all day, not looking out anyhow. So.
Right. So if you guys have any questions, put in under the tab. But I see that Briar has actually put in most of her questions. Briar, do you mind just staying up here and we'll have?
Sorry, I don't want to. I didn't. I just keep. Kept stuff come up, but if he already covered it, it's fine.
Okay, so Steve, was EllaType solely a cold type shop?
Yeah, we did type with. It was either the Phototypesetting or the typesetter. We did a little scan. I think they did some stat work. You know, stat. I should explain what that is. When you had artwork, let's say you hand did a logo, and we used to do logos. We didn't have Illustrator. Illustrator's a luxury. We used to hand do it. Often with a ruling pen. A lot of people used ink. I used gouache on a ruling pen, and you would. It was a mechanical paintbrush basically, and you'd get your logo to be perfect, and then you'd shoot a picture of it. That was a stat. It was kind of like the same machine as the typesetter machine, taking a picture of your type. Right. It would take a picture of your artwork, and then they would take that, whatever size you wanted, you'd have to, and as a designer, you'd have to figure out they had a proportion wheel, and you have to figure out your proportions. I never understood how to use that proportion wheel. I just used a calculator.
Proportion wheel.
No,
Huh.
but
Interesting.
I have.
You have one?
yeah, they had.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome.
So, it was doing the math for you, basically. So if you had, if you had something 5 inches and you wanted it to be 3, I know that's 60%, but, that's an easy one. But the proportion wheel would do it for you. But I just did the math.
Oh, wonderful.
3 divided by 5. Yeah, that's a
Scale.
proportion.
Oh, you know what? I think actually we have one of those. It's interesting. Yeah. That's great. That's great.
I never used it. And, we used these, this was one we made at EllaType, right? And it was a film positive, and it has inches, and it has millimeters, and it has picas, and it has rule widths. So one point rule, 2-point rule, 3-point rule, and then these are points for typefaces, right? So if you were to find type, I don't think I can do this on the camera backwards, but you would measure, well, how big is that typeface? Well, that might be 48-point type, and so you'd have that see-through ruler to find it, and you can do the same with the rules. Figure out the width of the rule. So because we had to measure everything and we had to look for it, so that was we made these. But you can buy them. I mean, I have a Statler rule which I swore by in art school. This is actually, I use this like I had to do some labels. I was working on a label project, and they gave me. In fact, I have the bottles right here, right? So I had a bottle, and if you have a metal ruler, how the heck are you gonna measure? How are you gonna do that? But if you have one of these flexible rulers, you just come around here and you figure out how round it is.
Clever.
So it's a useful thing even today.
Very much so.
Was it EllaType? ELLA?
ELLATYPE. And I looked it up online, and I can't find anything on it. Is it 60?
They have a Wikipedia.
6600 Sunset Boulevard. Yeah, 6600.
Oh, Briar, this must be such a difficult project for you because nothing is online, right?
You'd be surprised. There are lots of other weird fanatics like me that have Flickr streams full of images, and I've found a lot of other like-minded folks over Twitter, and so it's actually the internet. I don't think I could do this without the internet.
Sure.
Really.
Right. That's
really
true.
great.
Okay, Briar, you have another.
So you're
Go ahead, Steve.
You're in post on your movie now.
Yes. I might be doing.
And where can we?
Movies, but yeah, we're in editing right now.
How long of a movie is it going to be?
Feature.
The feature movie, 2 hours.
Featured. Wow.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
Wow. You have that much footage, eh? So who did you interview? What kind of people? Give us I
interviewed. So I interviewed a lot of people who I call your generation. I would call the transitional generation, because you got to do both, which I think is a really great position to be in, because you have a good eye that you developed by doing things by hand. And then, so Ellen Lupton, Adrian Shaughnessy, Ken Garland over in England, Tobias Furr Jones, and then a number of photo setters, people who are photo typesetters in New York. So
they are still?
They were, yeah.
Oh, you said at present.
No.
I was going to be amazed that people would pay for that.
But yeah, it was, that they were harder to find. That's where the internet really came in, is I put out a call asking people to connect me with cold typesetters. And luckily they came through.
We're just a little too late, Steve.
That's all right. I never, I did it for 3 years. It taught me a lot. I mean, I learned typography watching some great designers and what they did. And they didn't teach me directly. They didn't even know me, but you know, I learned a lot from it. It was a great process. So I'm glad I have it, but I don't know. I mean, I think you get different. Everybody's life experience they use to their benefit, and I don't think you're missing out if you don't have the same training. You just have different training. So
well, I was telling one of my students earlier today that I had a really tough art director at one point, and she came from doing paste up. And I do think that by, you know, I got some of her, I was able to get some of her knowledge that I don't know if I'm able to give that kind of knowledge to my students, because it's like generation, you know, it's now another generation away from having.
Oh, that's
yeah,
right.
and I actually think that is what's suffering in education in the design departments now, is how to, because a lot of us teachers in the university are not of the transitional period. And so we're trying to figure out the connection between the fundamentals and the software. And that's what we're doing at TypeEd, is trying to figure out how to teach that in a better way than they're doing, which is software based in the art departments. In in California, it's like that.
Yeah. No, it's.
You make me feel like a font, a transitional font. I'm a transitional.
See, we'll keep going down the list here. So Briar also is asking, so you can mix type sizes and styles on a single line?
Oh, yeah. When you typeset, yes, you could, but it was a type number, right? So I'd have to say type number 1 is this style, this size. Type number 2 is this style, this size, and then type number 3, and you only could do 20 of those in a job. You could create a new job and just do it more, but you only could do 20 type numbers at a time. And you could do it. I mean, I remember in art school, we had to, and I was typesetting at the time, so I had a great advantage, and we had it. And cost-wise too, so I'd spend my extra time at my job. I had the key, and I'd go in on the weekend and typeset my own art project. And I remember one we had to typeset a play or something, or a movie script, just like a page spread. And I wanted it to be on a curve. I wanted the type to be on a curve for the one voice, but then the other voice was going to be just a vertical line, so that, you know, flush left. So they were both flush left, but one was on the curve. So I was able to typeset that. That would be really hard to do on the computer today. You could do it, but you'd have to, you know, like you could do it in InDesign, but you'd have to do like 2 different type blocks, right? And you'd have to overlap them. But we just did it one. I would just type, you know, indent 20 millimeters, type number 1. And whatever that voice, that was, you know, it was 8-point italic, that voice. And it was teaching us typography, how typefaces have a voice. And I mean, it was a good project, actually. And then the straight one might have been, you know, 12-point Bedoni, and that was another type number, and I didn't have to indent it at all. But I had to keep that curve. I had to get that indent just perfect. So I went back and forth a few times to get it right. But yeah. That was a luck. Yeah, that was really. People were mad at me. That's not fair. He's the typesetter. Yeah, but I was waking up at
like Letraset Lorem Ipsum to.
Oh, they wouldn't allow Letraset where I went to art school.
Snobby.
No way. What?
A little snobby.
Yeah. It was definitely, you know, it was at Sussman, Prezja.
Oh yes, that's right.
Teachers. No Letraset. I did. Before I went to art school, I did a lot of Letraset, running those letters together. Yeah.
So back then, and Briar, just let us know if you need to get off. So I don't want to hold you the whole time. But so Steve, if you wanted to have type faces from 2 different foundries, did we have to go to 2 different typesetters to achieve that?
Yeah, I mean, well, you know, if you went to Andreessen, they had Berthold equipment, and they had other equipment. I don't remember what else they had. But yeah, the EllaType, we had Berthold and Berthold only.
Okay.
And we had we had the discs, you know, and that was
so.
it.
But not all
unless it's the stuff on the typesetter, though. You could get, you know, all the headline.
Okay.
Photos. You could get all of those. But yeah, maybe some people did. I think some people used Berthold for a while, but it was expensive, and then they went and used something else. Yeah.
So.
And a lot of printers had their own typesetting too.
Really? Oh, I did not know that. Okay.
Oh yeah. Oh,
that would make sense.
And you know, and in terms of all the, you know, paste up, you know, when you got the galleys and you used a hot wax and you pasted it up on the boards, you know, those were production artists. A lot of designers didn't even do their own paste up. They had production artists, and they weren't paid as well. They weren't necessarily creative. You know, so you had your typesetter, you had your designer, you had your typesetter, and you had your paste up artist.
And now we're all three.
Yeah, that's fairly common. Right now we get paid less.
Websites too.
That's right. Huh. It just goes on and on.
And UI design. And
let's get to the next one. So Briar asks, did you develop the type sheets too? Oops, someone's phone. Or was that someone else's job? Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Maybe just turn it on and off.
No, I got it. No, I don't. I'm sorry. It'll go away after one more ring.
I meant to say galleys.
I never use that often.
Go ahead, Briar.
I meant to say galleys, not
galleys. Okay. So.
Yeah, that was what a sheet of paper, a sheet of final type from a typesetter was a galley.
Right. So did you develop those?
And sometimes, yeah.
Did you develop those?
Well, yeah, that's what we did. We created galleys. Now, so, you know, if it was a book, it was all the same typeface. You just have pages and pages of the same size, the same width. But if somebody was doing stationery or, you know, a brochure, they might need some pull quotes. Then we'd just have it all over the page. It was a whole hodgepodge kind of thing. It just depended on what the job was. Yeah, but they were all galleys. Yeah. And, you know, you try to maximize. I think, and I don't know how we priced it. I don't remember, but I think per page, I think you had to pay more if you had more pages. So they wanted you to jam everything on one page.
Kind of like ordering an INT.
Right? Because the paper, photosensitive paper is expensive.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Okay.
So I think he charged him for it. I don't know. But it was quite expensive. I mean, $30 minimum just for one word. I mean, that's where he made a lot of money, but it was quite expensive. Now he had to pay us, and he had to pay. You know, we had a proofreader, and we had a typesetters, and we had a guy in the darkroom, typesetters, and he was out there. The owner was there. And we had delivery guys, and we had somebody doing the books. So, you know, he probably had 15 people, and we had 2 shifts too. So I worked mornings, 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. And when I went, and then I wanted to go back to art school, and so I asked him. I said, "Hey, can I come in early?" Because my classes were going to begin at 12:30. So I would work for 9 months. I worked from 4 a.m. to noon, and then I'd go over to I'd make it to art class by 12:30. It was crazy.
Crazy.
But he liked it because I got the work done, right? I got up early and I got all that, whatever they didn't finish at night, I would get done because designers wanted their stuff by 9, 10 o'clock in the morning.
Gosh.
You know, we had a big rush every morning to get stuff to designers, and we pretty much did it the same day or next day. It was done quickly. That's
an amazing turnaround, by the way. I mean, even when I'm typesetting now, sometimes I just can't get it done in a day.
I wasn't very fast typist actually. I was detail guy, but you know, if it was only about my speed, I would have been fired after the first 3 months.
So Steve, I'll go to the next question.
Yeah, it was.
Okay, so Alyssa's asking, do you have advice for people who do book design? What kinds of classes should we be seeking out, and are there any tips or tricks that would be good to know?
Wait, where are you seeing these questions?
They're underneath. There's a tab.
They're not on. I don't see that question. All right.
Scroll from the.
You scroll down right underneath the video. There's a tab that says questions and topics. So if you click on that, you'll see it. Okay.
I'm slow.
That's okay.
I'm sorry. Well, I mean, I don't know if there are. I'm not an educator, not because I wouldn't. I mean, I just never had an opportunity to be an educator. I think it would be interesting.
That's what I do.
I don't know where. Actually, I could have done it, but I knew that person. I couldn't do that. Tips. I don't know where you can. I mean, maybe you guys know better where you can find tips and tricks. I really don't know. I mean, you obviously got to study publication design and typography, and any typesetting trick you have is really,
and how
really
did you
helpful.
learn publication design? You were doing books for LACMA, right?
Well, you know, the LACMA thing was kind of funny because one of my teachers recommended, they were looking for somebody, and I was young and inexperienced and really didn't know what I was doing, quite honestly. And I interviewed at LACMA for a job, and they gave it to somebody else. But then the art director called me and said, "I have a job for you, a freelance job," and it was a book, and I was just going to do the production. It was a book. It was a co-exhibit with Bologna, Italy, and LACMA on a painter, Guido Reni. And the Italians were going to design the book, and they were going to give it to me, and I was going to get the type, you know, spec the type, and they had a typesetter out in the valley that I think they were using. It wasn't EllaType. And I spec'd it all up, and I got the galleys, and it wasn't even that far, actually. In the first meetings, we were waiting. We were in a big hurry, and we were waiting for the book to get designed so the Italians could give me the design. And they never, because we were just going to have a page be the type, and the opposite facing page would be the image of the artwork. And they were going to do that in Italian. And then they were going to give us the design, and I was going to buy the English version. The editor would give me the type, the translation, and we would just plug in. And so we wouldn't have to change the book at all. It could be two different languages, even same artboards or, you know, similar artboards. They would just swap in the type. And I was in a meeting, and they said, "We haven't gotten the design yet from the Italians, and we're in a big hurry. We got to get started." And I said, "Well, I can design it." And they said, "Okay." And that was my first really design gig. And I just sort of backed into it. Yeah, it was big. It was huge. It was a lot of work. I think I spent like 4 or 5 months on it. You know, and I got a trip out. I got a trip to Italy out of it.
That's good.
But you know, at the very end, it was really a push to get it all done because it was so much work. And then after you do this with a book in the old way of doing it, well, you don't have the folios done until you're done with the book because you don't know where they are. So I had to remount every board, square it on my drafting table to make sure it's square, and then I'd have to cut out the page number for each one and put it on there. And page numbers were weenie, you know, and you don't have a whole lot of like if you have a line of type, you can square it really easy. But if you had just a couple numbers, I mean, that was especially. I probably used old school. I'm sure I used old style numbers, old style numerals, which don't have a baseline. So then it's really, you know, who knows? I don't even want to look at that.
That's the thing that Ellen Lupton complained about in the interview was she hated setting numerals or folios. Right.
Folios. It was it took me probably a week of doing just folios. It was hard work.
That's why I always tell my students, you guys are so lucky. You don't even know how long this process used to take. So, yeah, hopefully they appreciate it.
They don't understand. They don't understand.
All I can say is you're lucky you don't have to use cork because I started with cork.
Wait. I started with PageMaker.
Oh, let me pull up that PageMaker screen if I can.
And right. And then I went to Quark because how could you be using PageMaker? Everybody's using Quark. And then I went to InDesign. And I still use Quark for one program, one client that I've had for 30 years.
What?
I still use Quark.
I know, right?
Because I never bought, and I have to spend like $800 on the program. And I don't use it for anything else except for this one because I'm too lazy to swap it over into InDesign. Yeah.
So Steve,
I mean, but Quark was the way to go. I mean, when I was using PageMaker, people were like, you got to use Quark.
Yeah. And Quark was great.
So
I interviewed Paul Brainerd, who is was the inventor of PageMaker for graphic.
Huh, wow.
So he says some interesting stuff. He came from the printing industry,
Mm-hmm.
so he knew what he was talking about. And I mean, people love PageMaker.
Yeah.
I used it for many years. I mean, in fact, years ago, there was a guy writing a book about, I think it was PageMaker 5 or something, and he had a section called "Learn from the Experts," and he had an interview with me, and where I don't even remember what I said. I have the book somewhere.
Oh, Steve, I know that you have some books that you have there in the office. Did you want to show us some of the type specimen books that you had? Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah. So I got this. This was the Grand Poobah of type books, right? There's a double set of all the typefaces that Berthold made at the time. My boss gave it to me as a gift because he knew I loved type. Because I mean, I don't know if I was the only typesetter that wanted to be a designer. These guys were not even interested in doing design. I was the only one. So these books this is the way, I don't know.
Yeah.
So a lot of times what designers would do, this is kind of hard to explain, but you had these different sizes for a reason. Because if you were speccing out a job, you would copy these pages. When I opened my studio, the most important thing wasn't a computer, although I had one. It was a copy machine. That was I spent like $7,000 on a copy machine that could do different sizes and it could print. It could copy 11 by 17 because I needed big sizes. Because you would copy these paragraphs, let's say, and you'd want a 10 pike a wide column at this point size, whatever one of these is. You'd copy these pages. Now there's more. Let me find I just opened it arbitrarily. And you would Xerox them. You'd copy them. So you'd take this and maybe make it your width that you wanted. You'd spec it out that way. And you'd show your client the design, but it was Laura Ipsum, it was Greek or whatever it was, but you had to comp that up to show your client what it would look like, because you couldn't just go order type or show them 4 different versions of how this could look in different typefaces. So you'd have to. So even before final, you were mocking things up on your drafting table all day long.
You used it in a way that we use Pantone chips now, where you would basically show a design and go, okay, but here's the chip. This is the actual color. You would use it to show the actual typeface, correct?
Yeah. I mean, that was, we learned that in art school. That's how we did all our art school projects, because we couldn't afford, and they didn't expect you to be able to pay for it, buying type for every project. Right. Some teachers would require that you buy type at the end for the final project. But yeah, that's how everything was done on those. So those books were pretty, and then Berthold would release new versions when they had a new, so I have all these little books too, right? So these were like, I don't know if you're familiar with Emigre, but Emigre always does, when they have a new typeface, they release a font book, right? They do something like that. That's what Berthold, so they'd show samples, they would show the type, what it looked like, and tell stories. And these were the old Berthold. These are probably worth some money.
Yeah, they are probably.
Yeah, Briar, how much are they worth?
I don't know, but I mean, those Berthold books look incredible. Those big ones.
Right.
See, and that looks like that page right there is what would go in the Berthold book.
Yes.
So that they would save it for the next edition. They probably had it done, and then they would put it into the next edition of the book. And I have a bunch of
Steve, those are marketing pieces, aren't they?
Well, I think they used them to sell the typeface.
Okay, I see.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't even remember where I got them. I got them at conferences, I think, or I once had an opportunity to. Gunter Lang came and spoke here in LA for AIGA, and he was my hero because Gunter Lang was the head of the design typeface development for Berthold. he was the guru. I mean, if you looked him up online, I mean, he was responsible for the quality of Berthold typeface. He was a real. I mean, at the time, I thought maybe I'd want to design my own typefaces, but after I designed my first one, it was really bad, and I said maybe not.
Was that digital?
So,
or was that?
Well, no, I think this was probably set on the Berthold
Your
machine.
typeface. Did you design it digitally?
It was. I used a photographer, and it was really bad. It was a headline font, really. And actually, I got a gig from it because a woman was starting a clothing company and saw the typeface through a friend of mine. I only shared it with like 3 people, and I did. She wanted her logo to be in that typeface.
Oh, cool. Mm-hmm. Cool.
So all that hard, I probably made 50 cents an hour.
That's what we make now. You know that, right? With all the hats that.
Yeah. Well, some jobs I do make 50 cents an hour.
Well, thank you so much, Steve. I really appreciate your time. I don't think we have any more questions. I really appreciate everyone being on today. And then, Briar, when is the documentary coming out, and how do we see it?
So the documentary is probably coming out in fall, although I told my Kickstarter folks that it could be as late as next spring, just because I've never made a movie before, so I wanted to be sure to make sure I had enough time. But
are you using real film?
No, that would have been beautiful. That would have been a nice ode. I am making the composer is making the music with analog synthesizers, though. So, but I couldn't afford to make the movie in film. No way.
I was teasing. It was.
But yeah, I will be at TypeCon in September up in Seattle, and I will be at EllaType in Warsaw.
Great.
Or TypeCon is in August.
Wow.
And
Isn't I thought EllaType was going to be in Montreal? No. Maybe
no,
not.
Warsaw.
Okay.
And if I'm going to screen it there, and it might just be a rough cut.
Warsaw. Got it. Yeah. So.
So you gave us a link right there, graphicmeans.com.
Yeah.
All right.
So Briar, I've already been in contact with you about screening it in Los Angeles. So I'm hoping that we can bring it to the type-edit community here.
Absolutely.
And of course, Steve will be with us watching the movie as well.
I would love to meet you all.
I'd love to. Rachel sent me a link of something I saw. It brings back so many memories.
Good. I hope they're good memories.
Well, yeah, it's part of life. You know. Good, the bad, the ugly.
Well, thank you both so much for spending time with us, and I hope you have a great day.
Well, thank you.
Thanks, Steve. I appreciate it. Okay.
All right. I loved it.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for joining us. Bye.
Bye.